And welcome back to the show. A recent rent moratorium took place in effect in 2020, but the ban will last at least until May the 1st. The COVID-19 Emergency Eviction and Foreclosure Prevention Act is one of many coronavirus-related bills that the state legislature and New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo created amidst the pandemic turmoil. The new bill will help to ensure New York tenants, homeowners, and small landlords will not have to fear being kicked out of their homes if they've been impacted by the pandemic and economic crisis. But the question is, what can tenants actually expect, as well as what can homeowners expect moving forward? Here to tell us more is the partner at David A. Gallo Associates, Robert M. Link, and we're pleased to have Robert back with us again. And Robert, Happy New Year. Good to have you.
Happy New Year, Darren. Good to be here. Thank you.
As I said a few seconds ago, we bring old baggage into the new year. And for some, when we talk about this moratorium, it works well for some, and it really is a challenge for others, particularly landlords. If you're a landlord and you really have to deal with this moratorium that's now in effect at least until May the 1st, how do you survive?
Well, if you're a landlord, you got a decision to make. Do you want to take advantage of this narrow opportunity that the legislature is allowing you to evict? You have to personally serve the hardship declaration form on your tenant with your rent demand or with your 30 or 60 or 90-day notice to terminate the tenancy. And you have to allow them an opportunity to interpose this hardship declaration to stay the eviction process until May 1st. And what this is really is an acknowledgement that this coronavirus hasn't gone away. The first time I came on this program, I told you, at the end of the day, the eviction process requires people to pile into a courtroom, meet face to face, litigate cases, and that unnecessarily exposes people to the virus. And what the legislature and the courts are saying is, well, we're not going to just allow that to happen. Even in, at some level, they're able to conference cases, they're able to hold some Zoom conferences or phone conferences or something like that, but you can't redo the entire housing court system the way we know it. So you might just have to kind of just wait this out. So it's going to be May or even later, maybe for some landlords, August, September, before you start to see these evictions pick up.
Yeah, but we talked about the whole going virtual component. I mean, there are some arbitrations that are being handled virtually. And if we're looking at May, again, let's go back to the conversation we had last time. Aren't we facing a potential huge backlog in our court system?
It's going to be an incredible backlog. These cases aren't going anywhere. In fact, some landlords have a decision to make about whether or not they just want to pursue money judgments in civil court as opposed to waiting for the housing courts to open. So if you got to remember, if under New York law existing right now, if you want to evict a tenant for a holdover where the lease is up and the tenant's been there more than 2 years, you have to serve already a 90-day notice, and you would serve that with the hardship declaration form. And you're talking about your action being stayed at least until May 1 if that hardship declaration form is filled out. Cases were already new cases being put on the calendar in March and in April. If we're waiting to May to actually bring those cases, because right now, at least for the next 60 days, the court isn't accepting cases unless it's a nuisance or some narrow circumstance where the landlord complied with the new legislation. So you're really talking about September, October 2022 when a lot of these cases start to pick up.
Yeah. As a lawyer yourself, talk to us about how this impacts you, the work that you do. I mean, given the fact that we've got these new moratoriums and the extension now in place, how does this affect lawyers in the courtroom?
Well, we're not going to court so much. That's number one reason why it's affecting us. With a lot of my commercial tenants, I'm working with them to find settlement resolutions. So putting some of the payments a little later in the second year of the lease, third year of the lease, on towards the backer further end of the lease, or abating some of the month's rent, where if you had a restaurant and you've been shut down and you're not making any money, well, maybe the landlord can take a haircut or can fully abate a portion of the rent for the period that the government said you couldn't operate. The legislature hasn't done much, if anything, for the commercial tenants. So those processes are still moving forward, albeit at a pretty slow pace. So, for example, where I am situated in Nassau County, new holdover cases are getting March and April return dates. In the Bronx, I've had some cases that were commenced over the summer start to make appearances, start to have settlement conferences, and those cases are moving through the system. But the legislature meets starting in January. Maybe they'll have something prescribed for the commercial tenants. Right now, they haven't done anything.
So we talk about settlements. I mean, obviously you said settlement conferences, that started in September. We're now in July. And so if you're on the commercial side, you can potentially see yourself having to wait for months with the tenant right there, not paying rent, and still have to wait this out in a long period of time.
Right. The best thing you can do is reach out to your tenant if you're a landlord, a commercial landlord, or a residential landlord, and try to work something out that works for both sides, particularly if that tenant has been a long-standing tenant and is someone who you expect, when things open up, can pay the rent and stay there for a long time and continue to be a good tenant. Now, if you don't have a good working relationship and the pandemic has just, compounded that, well, then you have a decision to make about whether you want to go through the eviction process. But what we're doing right now, most of the lawyers I know that working on both ends are trying to resolve these cases. And because at the end of the day, if I'm evicting a tenant, particularly a commercial tenant, who am I going to get in to take that tenant's place? I mean, or, if I do get someone in to take that tenant's place, what is going to be the rent? How much of a hit on a month-to-month basis am I going to take, and how long is it going to take to lease that space? So we have some difficult decisions. It's really got to be done on a case-by-case basis with you and your business managers and your attorneys. If you're a residential landlord or residential tenant, you got to think about how you're going to pay your expenses and come to these determinations as well with your trusted advisors and attorneys.
Yeah. And so with the new legislation, or I should say the new extension on the moratorium whatsoever, what else do you view as potentially problematic for you guys?
Well, don't worry about us. We'll be okay. I mean, lawyers, we keep busy. We find something to do. But with respect to, these new laws, every single time you come up with a new law, and you're going to have tenants attorneys that interpret it one way, you're going to have landlords attorneys that interpret it another way, you're going to have downstate judges who see the law one way, you're going to have upstate judges who see the law another way. So there's going to be a lot of litigation created by these new laws, and they'll go to the appellate division. And then a year from now, 2 years from now, or the appellate term in the case of housing court, and you'll see determinations start to come down about what these laws actually mean, the fine points of the law. So that's really going to take a long time to shake out. Actually, the hardship, the Emergency Eviction and Foreclosure Prevention Act sunsets in May. So the cases that are brought after May won't have to comply. And what you probably will see is a lot of landlords saying, you know what, I don't want the headache of even complying with this. I'm just going to wait until May and see what happens.
Back up for a minute, because you said to me you just said a few seconds ago, it could go to the appellate court. The appellate court could take about a year. I mean, if you're battling with the tenant, going back and forth, and you're trying to get that eviction, that literally means the tenant could actually be in the building for almost a year and nothing can be done if you're the landlord?
Well, there's things that can be done. So if I were the landlord's attorney and the tenant brought an issue to the appellate term or to the appellate division, what you would want to say is, listen, you're going to stay this case, but I want some payment while, like a bond posted, just to kind of protect, both sides and maintain the status quo. So you would ask for a bond to be posted which wouldn't probably be granted in the residential context, but would probably be granted in most scenarios in the commercial context. So if I represent a large restaurant, and I'm 10 months past due on my rent, and the landlord has this case pending, and there's this appealable issue that is ripe for the appellate term or the appellate division to decide. Well, if I'm the landlord attorney, I'm going to say, okay, I understand that you have to do this, but in the meantime, they should be paying rent or use and occupancy into court or posting a bond, just so that I'm not left holding the bag after an additional year. So there are some remedies. Another reason why it's good to speak to an attorney about these, fact-specific scenarios.
Well, that's why we're speaking to the attorney right now. And we thank you for joining us here on Open, giving us this information. Obviously, for landlords and for tenants, a lot of people will be paying attention to what's going to happen in the upcoming months. But with it moving to May, certainly a lot of eyes will be paying attention to see exactly how this all plays out. And you know what that means for you. We'll be calling you back again. Thanks so much for joining us.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Daren.
All righty. Well, I want to let you know now, if you want more information, be sure to stay tuned to us here on Open. We also want to let you know, too, if you want to find out more information in regards to Robert, you can visit his website, dagallp.com. Once again, dagallp.com. Why don't you stay with us? We've got more Open coming up. We'll be right back right after this.